This entire story was just so strange to listen to because I don't even know how this happens, and frankly, you'd be surprised. I'm just gonna let you in on a little sneak peek. I'm not as upset at the meet and greet itself. I'm more upset at the parents. What am I talking about? Basically, in Las Vegas, there's this restaurant called Dirty Dog, and what they decided to do as a way to kind of, promote themselves to the public, they decided to do a meet and greet. Who did they decide to have in their meet and greet? Well, none other than the wildly successful Bluey. Bluey is from that really, really popular show. I think it might also be called Bluey. I don't know. I'm not a child. I'm pretty sure it's Bluey. But regardless, it is a wildly popular Australian show that is well known amongst kids and family members and parents alike. It is wildly popular. So who else would be a better suit for a meet and greet outside of a restaurant? No one. Bluey's top G. Now, things like this aren't exactly crazy. Stuff like this happens all the time. People dress up as, characters from TV shows, and then they do this little meet and greet. It makes the imagination of children go wild. It's crazy. I can't believe I met SpongeBob outside of IHOP. Did you see it, Mom? Man, he was smoking a lot. But it's a cute little thing. But that's where the problem kind of began, because I feel like, and rightfully so, mind you, the restaurant Dirty Dog did not quite anticipate how many people would be showing up for this meet and greet of Bluey. I mean, you wouldn't expect a giant line for people to meet up with somebody dressed as a cartoon character. How many people RSVP'd to this event outside of Dirty Dog? A lot. A lot. And it's shocking how many did. How many showed up, you might be asking? It's not 100, not 500, not even 1,000. Over 3,000 people RSVP'd to meet outside of a restaurant in Las Vegas to meet not Bluey, but somebody dressed up as Bluey. And then the whole thing kind of went exactly how you would thought it would go. Long story short, it ended up becoming a disaster for multiple reasons. Really only 2 reasons. First of all, the costume for Bluey wasn't exactly, good. There's some people who show up in like the giant inflatable Bluey, costume, and those are nice, those are cute, but that's not what happened at this restaurant. The person who dressed up as Bluey, it was very, very poorly done, unfortunately, so it just kind of looks like a person in a Bluey onesie, with their face completely exposed, so the mystery and the magic of, seeing Bluey instantly vaporized once they saw that's not Bluey. That's somebody that skinned Bluey. So that was issue number 1. Issue number 2, the restaurant, and frankly, understandably, didn't anticipate so many people to show up to a meet and greet with somebody dressed as Bluey. So the event went on, people went up to go talk to Bluey, kids ended up crying because their imagination was just ruined, and then the magic of Bluey was just kind of like destroyed. And the whole thing, understandably, got very, very poor reviews, in which it had multiple parents commenting, "My 3-year-old cried because of this," and their entire evening was ruined because this was not well put together. This is disgusting. And because of this, people have been making the comparison with this in the Willy Wonka land and how much of a disaster that thing was. And that's where I need to step in and, I'm raising my shield, I'm getting my spear in hand, I'm defending Dirty Dog, and I'm also gonna knock over my microphone. Because the truth is, these two things are just not comparable. You can't compare the Dirty Dog incident, if you even want to call it that, to the incident at the Wonkaland, because it's just not the same. Reason being, number 1, Dirty Dog was frank with what they wanted to do. It's just a meet and greet with somebody dressed as Bluey. Was the costume bad? Yeah, it was not great. It was kind of disgusting to see. But regardless, they knew what they were doing, and I feel like they expected everybody else that was gonna show up to also understand what they were getting into. It's not a giant event or anything like that. You're just meeting somebody. Was it on their, bad that the costume was really not up to par? Sure. But then I also asked the question, who RSVPs to this thing to the point where there's 3,000 people just eagerly waiting, like, I can't wait to meet Bluey. Oh, I can't wait. And I read somewhere that somebody put and I would never do this if I was this parent. I'd be embarrassed to post this. They drove an hour just to go to this restaurant in Las Vegas just to meet somebody dressed as Bluey. That is insane dedication. That is somebody that is trying to win custody of that kid, is what's happening right there. And to be quite frank, they didn't lie. And that's the big difference between this incident with Bluey and the Willy Wonka Land attraction. Because at least with Bluey, you knew what you were getting into. It's just a meet and greet. Whereas Willy Wonka, they promised a lot, and the flyer and the pictures that were presented, you know, they were fantastic. It made it look like a place, like one of those giant ice exhibits where everything's really colorful and everything. And it just ended up not being that. It looked like a warehouse out of Saw. So that was just plain deception, clear cut. And this didn't happen at Dirty Dog Restaurant, because they were quite frank with what they wanted. And even at the end, after everything happened, they just said it outright. Hey, you know what? There was a lot of people here, a lot more people than I expected, and they took it on the chin and then they moved on. Because it's not the end of the world, because they are a legitimate restaurant. This was just an unfortunate thing that happened with a meet and greet that they tried to pull, and it didn't work. You know what happens? They move on, they continue with what they were doing, and that's that. End of story. They just continued making hot dogs? I think that's what they do. Listen, they got a location in Vegas. I'm sure they're doing fine. And that's where I find myself siding more with them and less with the parents. The amount of people that showed up to this thing was just kind of jarring. I understand that Bluey is this giant phenomena that everybody loves, all the kids love it, but at some point you have to ask yourself, is this, I don't know, worth it? If you're nearby, I understand that. It's just this cute little thing. You drive up, you go to the meet and greet, and for those people, yeah, my heart goes out to you. I'm sorry that it wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be, but if you were one of the people that drove over an hour to go to this restaurant that they probably have never been to in their life just to meet up with somebody dressed as Bluey, maybe the problem is you. Maybe you don't have your priorities straight. Frankly, if you go an hour just to go to a meet and greet outside of a restaurant for a cartoon character, and you are an adult, and you understand that Bluey isn't real, it's just a cartoon, don't tell anybody. If you drive an hour knowing these facts, that's on you, champ. I'm sorry, but you just can't. And then to have the absolute goal to leave a negative review. Yeah, I understand that it's upsetting to you. It's a very upsetting thing to happen. But it's a meet and greet. I don't know what some of these people were expecting. I think some of these people expected like a show or like souvenirs or something. That's what it seems like with some of these people. It's just, I've said this so many times now, it's just a meet and greet with somebody dressed as Bluey. I don't know what they're putting in the water down there in Vegas. I don't know if they shipped over some of the water from Flint, Michigan, but this is just not logical thinking. Which makes me think of an even more horrifying revelation. Which is, what if some of these people that went didn't have kids? What if these are just adults that wanted to see Bluey? Because unfortunately, on Twitter, there is a very, very big audience of adults who watch Bluey on their own. And sure, fine. You watch what you want to watch. Don't quote me on that. To the degree of legality and overall common sense, watch what you want to watch. But I do think, and I'm sure there's at least one person that went there who was just an adult, who just wanted to see somebody dressed as Bluey. That's on you. You've just got to understand that it isn't that deep. And I feel like, thankfully, the restaurant, Dirty Dog, understood that it wasn't that deep, and they're continuing with their lives. And this whole thing just, I don't even think I'd call it a disaster. It was just a very, very strange event that just happened to happen. And I think it's going to be forgotten, fairly quickly. But the fact that it happened at all is just jarring. 3,000 RSVPs for somebody dressed as Bluey. Outside of a restaurant in Vegas, in which some people took an hour drive, or some, I'm sure, a multiple hour drive just to see Bluey. World's tough, man. And while I do think that this entire thing is just gonna be swept off into obscurity, it's not gonna be like the Willy Wonka thing that we are going to remember for years to come. I just think that this is just some strange event that happened that we will one day look back on while we're continuing our normal lives like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh well, I'm craving a hot dog now. But nonetheless, it was a very, very interesting story to hear. But that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, if indeed you still are. My name is Broxter, and I bid you all adieu.